25 years ago, a woman by the name of Becky Masaki founded an organization, the Asian Women's Shelter. Now, a quarter century later, they're continuing to help a lot of women in trouble. Speaking with us now is Orchid Pussey, the Associate Director. Orchid, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, I asked you before we were starting, where is this located? And you said, I can't tell you. Tell me about that and why.
Well, we've been a confidential location since we opened, and that's a necessity because people who are staying at the shelter, who are participating in the residential program, need to have absolute confidentiality of where they are in case, whether it's a trafficking employer or a partner or an ex-partner or some other part of their community that was hurting them, is searching for them.
Now, you have been working with this organization since 2001, so 12 years. What brought you to this organization in specific and to this work in general?
Oh my gosh. Big question. I think the commitments and the mission of the organization have been part of my kind of bone marrow for as long as I can remember myself as sort of a semi-adult person. Mm-hmm. And also I think two things. One, that the organization has a very strong margin to center commitment. So while we're Asian Women's Shelter, we work with everybody. And we have a very strong commitment to make sure that LGBT communities are part of our mission, part of our daily work, mm-hmm. part of our programming, and really thought of as something at the center, not some satellite afterthought.
Mm-hmm. So who was Betty Masaki?
Becky Masaki No worries. Becky Masaki was the founding executive director for Asian Women's Shelter, and she built AWS with a team of really, really dedicated, awesome people.
Right, and what brought this work to her? What made her say, we need a place where women can feel safe if they've been the product of sex slave trade or abuse? I mean, what was the moment in her life that said this thing is needed?
I think the moment came when she was working and in the field, and she almost left it. Mm-hmm. And she was teetering on the edge because she was experiencing a lot of misinformation and misinterpretation around communities that don't speak English, mm-hmm. Including definitely Asian communities, and people thinking either Asian means super, patriarchal and mm-hmm. women are meek and submissive and quiet and will never speak up and will never leave, that's why they don't call for help. Mm-hmm. Or people are like, oh, golden lotus blossom family, intergenerational, mm-hmm. so peaceful, of course mm-hmm. they're not calling. But in fact, there was no program where people could actually safely go.
Right. So, now, you say she was working in the field. She was a social worker?
She was a social worker.
And so that was here in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are there other organizations like this around the country, or is this something that is filling a specific need here in San Francisco in the Bay Area? I mean, for instance, where do your clients come from?
They come from all over. So some come from very locally, San Francisco. Some come from elsewhere in the Bay Area. Some come from elsewhere in California. People come from other states, and people come from other countries. Mm-hmm. There are other programs in the city. There are definitely other programs that are growing in number all the time to try to meet the needs of underserved communities. But I would say for Asian Women's Shelter, the thing that I'm really proud of is the commitment to LGBT safety. And that everybody deserves safety, and every relationship deserves safety, and everybody deserves the right to have education and fun around developing happy, fulfilling, mutually fulfilling relationships. Mm-hmm. And AWS has a really strong hold on that, on making sure that though we started as an organization primarily staffed by straight people, primarily serving straight people in the beginning, but that commitment came in and is just super rooted in a way that I think is really unique across the country.
So tell us what is, if there is such a thing, a typical client or a typical woman in need that calls you. And how do they find you? I mean, if indeed you are confidential, which we all understand the need for,
right.
How does a woman in need who either is being beaten up, abused, or is part of the sex tourism or sex trade, how do they find you?
Well, one thing I'll say is people who find us include women, they include trans people across the gender spectrum, they include cisgender men. So people find us because we put our stuff out everywhere. And so even though our location is confidential, we try to make sure that information about who we are is where everybody is. So maybe that's at the hairdressers, maybe it's at the grocery store, maybe it's at the church or the mosque, maybe it's at
a sex club?
Yes, but that's a little trickier because we're really thinking about we don't want to be flashy, because flashy means that if someone takes that card, someone might find it on them. So for trafficking, and that includes, labor trafficking, restaurant work, hotel work, as well as sex work, agricultural work, we made the cards really boring. So it would look like nothing. So if someone just picked it up and just slipped it in their pocket, nobody would think anything of it.
How big a problem is this, and how in the closet is it still? I mean, I remember just in the last few months there have been several articles in the quote-unquote mainstream press about sex trafficking, women who still are, they're 21st century slaves. How does that happen?
Easily, I don't know. I wish I had a happier response. It happens because there's demand. It happens because people are trying to find some way to make money to send home to a kid or to take care of their parents, or because they just lost their house. People are, there are a lot of queer youth who are trafficked. A lot of people, when they think, especially in mainstream trafficking work, people don't think that LGBT communities are connected to trafficking at all. They are. Make that super clear.
So when you say connected to trafficking, that means not only the customers, the people, the pimps?
Actually, I mean people who are trafficked. So people who have run away from home, who are homeless, who are unable to get a job, in a way that's really connected to their sexuality or their gender appearance. Those are people who also fall into a highly vulnerable population for trafficking.
And then who are the people that actually keep them literally in bondage? I mean, physically and psychologically, correct?
Yeah, physically and psychologically.
And who are these people?
There's a huge range. So
I mean, are they individuals? Are they gang related? Are there organizations that?
It's that whole range, all of it. Sometimes it's just an individual. Sometimes it's a couple. Sometimes, these are all real examples. Sometimes it is a knit group of people working together. Sometimes it's a series of people who each play a part, but they don't really know exactly what the next person is doing. They're just doing their part. They know it's not totally cool, but they get their pay done. Sometimes it's people who have diplomatic immunity. Sometimes it's people who are just working in less regulated industries.
Okay, stop right there. So you just said people with diplomatic immunity. Are you telling me there's diplomats who are involved in the sex trade?
Yes.
And
my name's not Orchid Pussey. No, I'm kidding.
No, but I mean, no, seriously.
No, I would say that there are situations more of home workers that are able to be brought from nation to nation to nation to nation, and who are incredibly hidden away, tucked away. Nobody knows about them. They're not the flashy cases. Lifetime doesn't make a series about them. They're not. They don't have movies
it's not
like
the three
Taken.
women that just got released in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's tons of those cases, and the treatment of those people is horrendous. And again, people don't think about, for example, lesbian or bi or trans women who would be in that situation of being a home care worker, but they are.
Right. So the fact is, slavery exists in 2013.
Yes.
Now, why is this an especially sensitive issue or prevalent issue within the Asian community? I mean, why is there a shelter in our last few moments just for Asian women?
Yes. So first, I would say it's not. So we have a multilingual access model. It has 40 languages in it right now, and they're definitely not contained to languages of Asian heritage, Asian origin. But we opened because at that point the population in San Francisco was up in the 30-some% Asian, but none of the crisis services, whether they were LGBT crisis services, family crisis services, suicide prevention, any of it, none of it was language accessible. So there was a hole, and we needed to exist to fill that hole because we believe everybody deserves safety and support and happiness.
Right. In our last few moments, what is the website if people want to learn more information?
Yes, please, www.sf like San Francisco, AWS like super or shelter, your choice, .org.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Orchid Pussey, the Associate Director of Asian Women's Shelter. Thank you for being with us. My name's David Perry. Thanks for watching 10%. We'll see you next week.